I hope I'm audible to everyone. So we can send a thumbs up if you guys can hear me clearly. Okay, I can see a few hands raising. Okay, so hi guys. I hope everybody is doing good. So yeah, let's directly dive into our topic for today. How to study chess openings. So nowadays, openings seems to be a very fascinating topic for many of us, right? Because we see a lot of chess players started to discuss opening as a major part. Even if you guys would have seen the World Championship match, Nepomniachtchi versus Dingler, one of the main topics that was discussed was the opening, right? When Dingler in the second game, he played the move H3. He was like, it was the hot topic in spite of him losing the game. So, and the next game with Black Breezes, he came with the French defense. So, why is this craze for the opening? It's happening. One of the things which we can say is because opening is the part where you can guess before the game that whichever opponent you're going to play, you can expect something from that, right? So during the tournament, it is the one part of the game where you can be prepared and you can also surprise your opponent in the opening phase only. You can't surprise it in middle game or end game because at that time both of you are out of your own. So that is one of the important things I believe is very important to study openings. So when coming to the part of studying, let's talk how nowadays people are studying. I think many of you can relate to it. So how do we study chess openings? So what we do is we pick up an opening basically from the latest trend. Let's say, for example, when Dingler played the H3 in that Queen's Gambit position, immediately we would see a trend of players started playing H3 line. In spite of that opening being a dubious one, not even actually understanding the purpose of the move, people start playing it. And how do they do it is basically they try to go to the database, mega database, and search for the position. And they will find a couple of games probably with that line. And they will look at those games and they will switch on the cloud engine. Cloud engine is basically an engine which is much stronger. It will be used by the top professionals for analyzing the games. So they use that to find the best moves in the position. And they try to make the most obvious move for both sides and they generate the moves. And with the reference database, they try to mix up things and they think they have a good understanding and try to play it over the board. So this is the trend and play. So this is what is happening nowadays. But if you see, if we are going to learn chess openings in that way, we can't really become a better player. It's very important to understand that chess opening is shouldn't just be for the sake of playing and surprising your opponent and so on that direction. You should see opening as it is like how you as a player grow with it. For example, let's say I'm an attacking player. I like positions which I which has some initiative going on. I should try to pick up openings which gives me that kind of position. So that is the first basic thing you need to understand. Before going to the study part, you should know how to choose the opening which you're going to study. Because there are any number of openings and any number of variations inside each one of it. Correct? So if you're not even sure about what you're going to, what is your own personality trait and what type of play you are, you're not able to, won't be able to find the best choice. So today what we will do is, with this reference, we will start a study with an opening, in a particular opening, a particular variation, and we will see how we can study it effectively, right? So let's consider myself as a positional player, which is not true, but anyway. So let me consider myself as a positional player. And I'm going to prepare white side. Okay. So when I'm going to prepare for white side, I need to see all the lines. So let's say I'm going to play the move 1e4. So first move e4, and I need to choose openings where I tend to get some positional gains. So let's start with the opening French defense. And here I have a lot of choices for French, correct? I can play e4, e6, d4, d5. I can start playing Winawer variation. I can play Tarash variation, correct? But as a positional player, I would prefer to go with Tarash rather than a Winawer. But Tarash, I might feel it is a dry opening. Let me switch on the board first so that you will also get a picture. So the topic, one second. Let me adjust the tone. Yes. So is the board visible for everybody? You can just send a thumbs up. Yeah, great. Okay, so let's say we are start preparing for French defense. I'm going to play white, and this is the first time I'm seeing. So this is the starting point for the French defense. So what would I do is, first I will just see what are the possibilities here, right? So one of the main variation which I didn't start with is French advance. So being a positional player, I would feel this move is more correct. Why? Can anybody say it in chat? Why do I, as a positional player, you should remember that, think this is the right move compared to other moves like knight c3 or knight d2? Any idea? Okay, Pavan has said it would be a closed game. Any other? So you should think from my perspective. Why would I say that? Arush is saying, because if it's a close position, we can't attack easily. Okay, Pai Diwali has said it right. Space gain. So that is the main purpose. The main point behind me playing the e5 move is I'm gaining space advantage. So I feel that is very important in the opening phase, and I would like to study more on this variation. Okay. So what is the next step after choosing the line? Let's say this is French advanced variation, correct? So what is my next step after studying, after finding out which is the variation which I would like to play? What would be the next step? Next step would be, I got some, we look at the games. Okay. So if you directly go and look at the games, we don't know which exactly to study, what to expect from those games. The second thing after choosing the variation, what you should do is you should look at the pawn structure. So obviously here, this best move for black is c5. Correct? And you play the move c3. So what you have to do is you need to understand the pawn structure in this position. Okay, let's remove all the pieces. So when you remove all these pieces, this is the pawn structure that we are dealing with, correct? So what to do with this pawn structure? If we have pieces, we know what we can do. But with this pawn structure, what are we studying? So you have to ask certain questions. How is this pawn structure? What can we determine from this one? You guys can attempt, before me explaining it, you guys can attempt to write it in the chat. So what do you think? What are the things we can discuss about this pawn structure? There's nothing bad in writing anything you attempt, you think of. You can just write, I will read it. So what do you think about this pawn structure? You can write from both perspectives, white as well as black. Okay, I got a detailed answer from Pawan. White's pawn chain is indicating that white should attack on the king side and black should go for the queen side. The main idea for black should be to attack on the d4 and go for the minority attack, while white will plan for the king side. Okay, that's a very good answer. So one of the important things which Pawan has mentioned is the pawn chains usually says which side you should be playing. So here you have a pawn chain, correct? So b2, c3, d4, e5, which means the arrow mark is facing towards the king side. So generally in these kind of positions, white tend to play on the king side. Similarly for black, This is facing this way, which means black should go with the queen side. Good. Okay, the other thing Ayush and Pavan, both of you had mentioned, is the d4 pawn is a backward pawn. That's a very interesting observation, because now after the c takes d4, c takes d4, the d4 pawn can become a target for black. Correct? So the basic question before going into the backward pawn and all, you should first understand what type of position is this. Is it a closed one or the open position? We already know it's a closed position, correct? And the next one is what is the strongest point and what is the weakest point. So if you talk about that, in this particular position, I would say e5 pawn is the strongest point for white. And which is the weakest point for white? Weakest is the d4 pawn. Okay, everybody is saying d4. Okay, d4 is weak only after cd4, cd4. But right now, what is the weakest point? b2, exactly. So right now, this is the weakest point. Let's say if black isn't at all breaking anything, he's just playing some b5 to b4, and then this break. So only if you break on a3, then the whole pawn chain drops, correct? Similarly, what is the strongest pawn for white? For black. Which is the strongest pawn for black? b5, good. And which is the weakest for black? f7, very good. So f7 will become a weakness. What white will be doing is, he will be going f4, f5 and attack on the king side with, if everything goes as per the plan. Okay, this is just for your understanding about the pawn structure. So next good thing to ask is pawn breaks. So that also we discussed. So what are the pawn breaks available in the position? Already we are seeing a pawn break with c5, and other pawn break could be possibly for white, which is f4, f5, correct? And the last thing we can discuss is good piece and bad piece, ideal piece placement. So let's say, for imagination's sake, where do you want to put your pieces? Let's say minor pieces. First, let's talk about the knights. Where do you want to put the knights in the particular position? For white. Okay, knight on d6, very good. So knight on d6 could be an outpost, good. If there is no dark square bishop, obviously. And then c6 for black, okay. c6, f5. Okay, let's first do for white. f3 is a good square for white. I'll put it in yellow color. Bishops, d3 is good because this diagonal is perfect. And the other bishop could be on f4, g5. These are some ideal squares that your knights and the bishops can go. For let me remove it. so that we don't get confused for black now. And for black, basically knight on c6, knight on f5, and the bishop should be on e7. And the c8 bishop is the main problem in French advance for black. So this bishop should be out of the pawn chain. And if that happens, black is already good. So one thing is he can try to bring it with this way, which is placing it on this diagonal. That is one option. The other option is bringing from this diagonal, but that will be only possible if there is a change in pawn chains. Correct? Okay, good. So, okay, we also discussed about the pawn breaks. For white, it is basically f4, f5 is a pawn break, and there is one more pawn break, which is a3, b4, making black to take some action on the board. And for black, can you tell me what are the pawn breaks that is available for black? What's the favorite pawn break for black in French defense? Every French player should know this pawn break. In spite of that pawn making your pawn a weakness. f6, good. So let's say f4 is happening, f6. So this is one of the important pawn breaks every French player should know. In spite of this weakening this pawn, it's a good move in most of cases because it gives activity. After e takes f6, we can have a fluid pawn structure. Okay, this is a completely different pawn structure. So I hope you guys get a picture how important it is to study the pawn structure of the variation which you're going to learn. Okay. So once you're good with the pawn structure, let it be the second thing. The third thing what we should be doing, any guesses? What is the third thing we can do in effectively studying the opening? Improve piece placement, developing pieces. Okay, improving piece, developing piece, attacking. This all, since we are new to this opening, we are not sure which and how we should be doing the correct. We need to have a good study material. Okay. How do we find the good study material? Here comes the help of the database. So we need to find games with this starting position, which is the starting position. So this is the starting position. Maybe even we can go a little bit further with the C5, C3. So this is the starting position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to research the mega database, this starting position, and I won't start immediately with the latest games. I'm going to do it in a reverse manner. So what is the reverse manner? I'm going to study the classical games. So that is what I'm more interested to learn because I want to know how this opening developed. Because when you see an opening is not played in some 20th century, correct? It is played even before that. So those days when you're trying to play something, they would have had a plan in their mind, correct? So they would have some different ideas. And those ideas were the one which is tested on the board and being tested so many times. And the best thing has popped up right now. So what we are going to study if you're seeing just the latest games is only the best lines. But that won't help you to grow as a player. So only if you study what is the basic idea and how it evolved, then only you will be able to understand the current version of it. And also the opening ideas and middle game will be improved drastically if you study the classical games. So since the mega database search will take a long time, what I did is I already picked up few games, and the first game which I found to be interesting in the classical is the game played by Paulson. So the first game is which we are going to see today is I will type out the game player and the year in the chat. And this game was played in 1883, not 2023. It is 1883. I'll put it in chat. So in that era, so what they were doing in the French advance, let's see. So here in the starting position, what black played is c takes d4. So we were discussing these things, right? d4 is the weakness, and black should immediately take action against it. And that's what black exactly did. So is it a right way to play, or do you guys think it's not the right way to play? If you're saying it's not the right way to play, then you can tell me a reason behind it. If you're saying it is wrong, then you have to explain why is it wrong. It is a possible way to play. Okay, with my knowledge, what I would think is, okay, black is trying to create something. Correct? What is he trying? He is exchanging the pawns, and maybe he's trying to play some bishop b4 check or something, or maybe immediately attack queen b6, knight c6 with the d4 pawn. So I would just go a few moves further. C takes d4. And now I realize that now my knight can immediately jump to the c3 square. Sorry for the wrong arrow. Correct? Initially, when my pawn is on c3, I didn't have that option. So if you're going to put pressure on d4, it's better to have the knight on my knight on b1, correct, for black. You don't have to play knight c's, you don't have to play cd4 to put the pressure. You can just immediately play knight c6 and queen b6. But if you are, so this is the beauty of the seeing like good, great players games in old times, because this is where the mistakes happen and you can study and learn from the mistakes. Nowadays, nobody's going to play cd4 against you, but you should know why they are not playing and what is the point behind not being playing, because that will help you not only in French advance, but in some other variations also. You will have a similar kind of situation where you will be maybe sitting from the black end and going to decide, should I clear the center or should I maintain the pressure? So this is why it's important to study the games. So let's see how Paulson punished black player. Bishop b4 check, knight c3, knight c6. He's developing his pieces, knight f3, knight g7. So black is saying, I'm also happy because I'm also able to develop my pieces and I'm going to go for long castle. Bishop d3, bishop b7, castle. Now he realizes a mistake because he's not able to castle immediately because that can run into what happens? Bishop h7. And you know the Greek gift. Good. So he's not going for that. Instead, he played even worse move, which was bishop into c3. Maybe he thought weakening of the pawn structure. This pawn he will try to attack and gain some counterplay. But that's a very, very bad idea in French because this is a very important bishop. And once you give away this bishop, your dark squares will become weak. And it was matter of a time. So why I'm saying these things is nowadays we will know, okay, this is bad, this is bad. But they have played this game in 1883, and that's when they are going to understand what is happening over the board. So now c3 pawn is already defending the d4 pawn. We played h6, rook b1, rook b8. Simple move, bishop a3, activating the bishop, knight c8. So I would say already white is clearly better because of his beautiful pieces, and black is not even able to castle. So we have reached a very good position with white. So this is where you can improvise your middle game as well. So this is the common type of structures which you can get in the position. Now you should know how to continue the game. So that is the second phase in your preparation. You should know how you can finish off the game. So what can we do? Okay, good. Arusha said it right. No, not queen c2, no c4, no rook e1. Knight d2. Good. The idea behind the move knight going backwards is two ideas. One, the weak pawn g7. Once the bishop on dark square bishop is lost, you are able to play queen g4 and attack the weakest point. Second, this knight can go here and attack. So these things I am learning from this game, which won't be possible if I haven't studied the classical ones. Okay. So the game a little bit compared with NB3, castle, knight c5, bishop c6. So now the next stage, what can we do? So black has castled, but white has got a good piece placement. How can we continue the attack? Okay, f4 is a good option. Bishop c2, queen d3, good. So f4, bishop c3, queen d3, I do agree, it's a good option. Let's see what happened in the game. White player played rook e1, Paulson. b6. Yes, rook left. Rook e3. So the pin, the b8 rook is pinned. You can't capture it. He simply brings the rook. So the question is basically when you play the move f4 here, and you can also play rook f3, correct? But that will block this diagonal. So if I want my bishop to come to c1 and play bishop h6, this will be a f4 pawn will be a blockade. So that is why he chose this path. Rook a8. Then he had to move the knight, knight a6, g6, rook h3, attacking the weakness, king g3, king g7, queen f3, some ideas with f6 check, f5, e f6, rook f6, queen e3. So you see this it's taking care of everything. And within few moves, white won the game with knight g8, queen e5, and white is getting knight c7 by force. Black king is too bad. And Paulson went on to win the game. Okay. Okay, so we learned some ideas like rook e3, rook g3 ideas, and knight coming to d2 idea, and white c into d4 is bad from the very old classical game. Let's go to the next game. So next game was played between Moraxi versus Tata Grover. Correct? This game, these two players, I think most of you would know because both have their own openings. Moraxi bind and Tata Grover is quite a form. In QGD, you will have Tata Grover variation. So let's see how they play. So this is how they started. And Tata Grover here didn't go for the CD4. He played the right move, knight c6, knight f3, queen b6. And Moraxi played the move bishop d3. So this was the main weapon for white in those times. So bishop d3 is what extensively studied. Nowadays we have many other options like bishop e2 and a3, but those times bishop d3 is the main one. cd4, cd4, and this is a well-known trap. I believe everybody knows it. If knight into d4, it's a blunder because of knight d4, queen d4, bishop e5 check, and the queen is lost. So black plays bishop d7. Now Moraxi played the move bishop c2, defending the d4 pawn. So do you think, is it a good move, bishop c2? So what do you guys think about bishop c2? So it's a good move. Okay, moving any piece twice is opening is considered bad. That is right. Okay. So the problem with this move is bishop c2 is actually knight b4. The point is after knight b4, you can't give this bishop because that is one of the beautiful bishop you are having in the book. And to save this, you have to go to bishop b3. And now black can exploit of you not having this bishop on the f1 to a6 diagonal by move queen a6. And now this queen is stopping the king from castling and moves like knight d3 check is there. So that's the drawback. But in the game, Tata Grover didn't you seize it, but he plays with the queen a6. And again, Moraxi got happy because he got back his knight to c3. Now, if you play knight b4, I'm not worried because I have bishop b1. Rook c8, a3, and you're fine, completely fine. Okay, if you could defend it with bishop e3. No, if you play bishop e3, then b2 is fine. So you can't really play bishop e3. Correct? Okay, and then castle. So this game continued in this way. So what I would learn from here is like moving my bishop. So this game, I would just understand why moving my bishop is bad. To c2 to defend the d4 pawn. So this would be my lesson from this game. So what I could say is like even though white won this game, when I'm analyzing the old classical game, I will try to check from my own understanding. I will try to learn why each and every move is played and what is the drawback of each move. Because nowadays we know what is the exact theory, right? We can just with any program we're able to find the best move. But we should try to learn why this move has become the best move. Because the previous move would have been failed due to some reasons. Only if you can get to know all these things, you will have a very good middle game understanding. Else, it's just with the memorization only. So instead of going with bishop c2, you should have played the move castle. That we will come back to that because in next game we're gonna see it. So next game was played between Rabinovich versus Ilian. So the game started with d4. Don't get afraid because it's only the starting. It again transposed into French. c5. And here Rabinovich is a very good player. He played the move Queen g4. So very interesting, correct? We know that g7 pawn is one of the big spot for black. But instead of just defending the d4 pawn, he just played the move Queen g4. And why this move is a little bit of an interesting option? It's because we are going to sacrifice the d4 pawn and focus all our thing on the e5 pawn. Let's go a little bit. cd4, knight f3, knight c6, bishop d3, queen c7, castle. So he's sacrificing the second pawn. But note, if you try to play bishop f4 here, black will play knight b4. And this is bad. Doesn't work. So queen c7, castle. So he has sacrificed two pawns, queen and d5. And his preparation, I think, I don't know if he had prepared it till here, or he would have calculated during the game. He thought after bishop f4, white should be fine. He would have thought. The point is after queen f6, queen g3, queen d8, because the idea is very simple. I'm going to play bishop e5, and this queen is getting cornered, and d4 will fall, and g7 will also be in price. Let's say I'm playing knight h6. You can just play. Okay, bishop g5 is good enough. Queen d means you can just play knight d2, not even bothering to capture the pawn. If knight f6, you can play bishop e5, and still the king is in center. It's a very interesting sacrifice. That's the point. But the problem is, what should black play here? Knight f6, Johan, yeah. Counter attack. So bishop into e5, knight into g4. Black is a pawn up in an endgame. So bishop g5 check, bishop d7, bishop into d7, king into d7. And here white doesn't have much compensation. Black was clearly winning at this point. Just 11 moves and a strong player is losing. But it doesn't mean his idea is very bad. His idea was good. He came up with the innovative idea of queen g4. It happened in 1932. So what we can do is we can look at the idea further. So similar idea was played by Paul Keres. I'll just put it in the chat. This game is happening in 1935. Last one was 1930. Here he played the move knight f3 first, not c3. Black player could have taken on d4, but he didn't. He played queen b6. And now he played the move bishop d3. So only thing is the queen is still on d1, but the idea is same, giving away the d4 pawn directly. Castle, knight d7, in b2, knight e7, knight b3, knight c6, rook e1. So what white is trying to do is he's saying this pawn is my strongest pawn. So I'm not going to waste time with the move c3 and defend my pawn. I'm going to sacrifice it. And in return, what I'm going to get is like I'm going to develop my pieces in a rapid phase and try to checkmate you. So black player played g6, then bishop f4, bishop g7, queen d2. Just going for the direct attack, castle. So what should black play here? I mean, what should white play here? Okay, bishop h6, rook a d1. So bishop h6 is the common choice for most of you. The important thing which many of you won't recognize in this kind of question is giving away the pawn. Right now you are actually a pawn down, but we believe that we can capture this pawn later part of the game. So that is your thought. But actually this d4 pawn is causing the problem. Why I'm saying is because when you move the f1 bishop and try to capture the d4 pawn, you will lose the e5 pawn. So it's better to leave it as it is and play the move c3. So what happens after c3? They have to capture, you capture back. You get the control over the d4 square. The knight can jump here. And this file is open. So a pawn sacrifice to open up the position. Queen c7 means you can just play queen e3 and then h4, h5. White is clearly better in this position. So you see, this is an interesting idea which you guys won't see it in nowadays games. But this idea became popular in Caro-Kann variation. E4, E6, D4, D5, E5, C5. So this is line. I don't know if you guys have studied this. So this is where is one line where it's Caro-Kann, but they waste a move. And you can play your knight f3, knight c6. And without c3, you can continue playing. Let's say I'm playing some random h3, cd4. You can continue with bishop d3. So the idea is basically derived from the classical games. Okay. Now an interesting game played by Mikhail Tal in the French Advance. So Tal has played few games in French Advance, and obviously it involves sacrifices. Yes, Tal's magic. I think by this time you guys would have known what he would have played. So this was the line where Paul Keres played the move bishop c2. I'm not sure. I'm not. Moraxi played bishop c2. Correct? Yeah. So here, Tal was the first one to go with this move, castle. I think few games have been played before, but Tal was the first person to make this as the main line, castle variation. He was ready to give away the pawns, knight d4, knight d4, queen d4. This game happened, it was a blitz game, but this game happened in 1958. But earlier they used to play this queen e2 line. I think even nowadays it's a little popular. But queen e2, and the idea is to keep at least one pawn. But Tal came up with the knight c3 move. Queen into e5. Rook e1, queen d6. So I would suggest you guys to, when you're studying the openings, you should keep the game and at least move by move. If you are not doing it move by move and just watching, memorizing, or just switching on the engine and checking, then you will tend to forget at some point. You can't remember everything at a time. Only if you understand the position and try to find it yourself, it will stay in your long-term memory. At least even if you don't know anything at that moment, you will try to come up with the moves and play it out over the board. So what should white play here? So while I sacrificed both the pawns, e5 and d4, but in return we have the initiative. Knight b5, immediately attacking the queen. If bishop into b5, check, king d8. How do we increase the pressure? Okay, g3, interesting. Any other move? Bishop g5, they will just block the bishop e7. Queen h5, attacking the pawn, forcing black to take action. If they play g6, you just play queen f3, attacking the pawn again, but this has created a weakness. Queen b4, let's say, attacking both bishop and the rook. Then bishop g5 check. Bishop e7, you can just capture queen into f7, that is fine because queen into b5 means rook into e6. If bishop g5, you can just play rook d6 check, king c8. And what is the finishing move? Rook c1 runs to bishop into c1. a4. The queen doesn't have any good squares. If you move any queen, I'm having this or this. It's game over. Of course, all games are going to be like that. So one more game he played. Similar to that, sacrificing both the pawns. But this time, his opponent was clever. He was Stahlberg in 1960. He didn't capture on e5, he went back with queen b6. And for queen b6, it's not the best move, but Tal didn't play the right move. He played queen g4. And after h5, queen g5, g6. Bishop into g6 isn't working, so I played a4. Bishop h6, queen h4. So in this game, Tal had some trouble. He was not able to equalize actually. a6, bishop h6, knight h6. Somehow here black went wrong with the move bishop h6 plan. He was able to, but if he hadn't played the bishop h6, it just black is slightly better in this kind of position. So again, you can see this line, even though it is very aggressive, we can see that if black doesn't capture the e5 pawn, he is doing fine. Just going back with one pawn is fine. He's not greedy to capture both. It is fine. So that's what we can learn from this game. Okay. So now I have studied some of the classical games. I would study even some more games and I will get a general picture. So first thing is I chose which variation I'm going to study. Second, I studied the pawn structure, what are the things in and around of it. Third, I started studying some classical games played by Paulsen, Moraxi, Paul Keres, Tal games. Now, the next thing what I would do is I would choose a player who studies, who plays French advanced quite often. Okay, so I'll try to search in database and pick up a player who plays this opening frequently at the top level, and also try to be if he's playing at the recent times, it's good enough for me. Why is because once you select a particular play, you can see what he is doing. He's in generations and generations he's been playing means definitely he would have improved a lot in that line, correct? Rather than a player who just play randomly for one or two games, it's wise for us to select a player who studies it in the long run. So when I was looking at French advance, I see like many players have played it in the even in the classical times, like Sveshnikov has played it a lot of time. But when I want to find a player who has done does it in both times, I found Alexander Grischuk. So Grischuk has played many games in French advance. So which means he would have a good understanding of the upcoming positions. So what I would do is I would select some of his games. Probably it's better to study all his games because you will know, even though some may not be as helpful as other games, but it's better to get an overall picture. What is he doing? So the first game I found was he played in 1999. Of course, with black also he has played few games, but with white played in nine against Nair. He played the French advance, and here by this time itself, Queen B6 and Bishop D7 was popular, but his opponent played Knight H6. So the point is, after Bishop and H6, G6, Black is fine. He's not having any big trouble. So Grischuk here plays the move A3. So now I'm surprised because in the classical times, nobody has really given a move with A3. Everybody was going with Bishop D3, Bishop E2. But suddenly some player of Grischuk standard, 2-7 standard. Remember this game, Grischuk is 2-5-4-9. But anyway, coming to the point, the standard is of it's of a high class, right? Oh, sorry, 1 second. Let me share it again. Uh, yeah, can you see it now? Okay, good. So he plays the move A3 in 1999. Nowadays, if you ask, everybody knows A3, but that time it was a little bit surprising. Black goes with the knight F5, B4, takes, Bishop E7. A very different approach. We saw Tal game, he was sacrificing D4 and E5 pawns and he was going for attack. But here, the Rishuk is playing on the queen side. Earlier with this pawn structure, what we are discussing, white should play on the king side and black should play on the queen side. But here, it's going in a different direction. Bishop B2, castle, Bishop D3. So white is not worried about his development. He's going in his own phase. A6, castle, With knight h4, trying to exchange of this f3 knight to remove a defender of the d4 pawn. You can just play knight d2, defend it. White is clearly better because of the space advantage. f6. So what should white play here? Okay, rook e1 is a fine. g4 is too ambitious. I'm really sorry. G4 is too ambitious. It won't work. Rook e1, knight d2. Okay, rise and I said bishop into f5, and that is what played in the game. Okay, this is a very interesting move, and it's only if you understand the position well you can make a move like this. Correct? It's not a usual move people would make because it's very committal. First of all, you're giving away a pair of bishop, and that is your best bishop for a knight on f5, and it also helps your opponent's pawn structure in some way. Like it helps in not exactly in pawn structure, but it helps in c8 bishop to breathe more. This bishop can breathe more. E takes f5. Knight c3. So what Grishchuk's plan is, he's saying this pawn is weak, and this center somewhat helps white. White has a good queen side pawns. So this is enough for me to create an advantage. So white's plan is very simple here. He's going to play on the queen side, not on the king side. He's going to play on the queen side, and he has a good center, close center. And the position is closed, and he says that is also going to favor my knights. Black immediately played f4, trying to activate this bishop. King h8, queen b3, bishop e6. And now one of my favorite moves in this game. Can anybody guess? E into f6, e f6, e f6, knight e2. No, not e f6. Usually my favorite moves is a move which has multi-purpose. So here Grishchuk plays rook e2, a very silent move, but the idea is very simple. He's going to create a battery and put pressure on these things. Black played f5. Is going to create something on the king side. Now what should you do? Okay, e1. No. Change of plans. Rook c2. Now I'm going to focus on the king queen side. Rook c8, knight a4, b6, rook ac1, knight b8, rook c8, bishop into c8. And a very important move for white, b5. So now which makes this pawn a big weakness. So this position, this pawn is weak, and we have a very good pauser. In spite of black having double bishop, since the position is close, white is clearly better. Good. And he later went on to win the game. Okay, so this was happened in the game in the year 1999. So in 2000, he plays one more game against Krishchuk versus Gulko, Boris Gulko. Boris Gulko is a Russian grandmaster and is known for his positional things. Let's see what he does there. Here he goes for the bishop e2 plan. So he knows a3 as well as bishop e2. So last game, it was I would say it is a paradigm shift because when you study the classical games, it was only attack with white pieces, right? Suddenly now he plays an opening where you attack, suddenly gives away the bishop and plays on the queen side. Those things happen. How fascinating is that? Now let's see. Knight g7. He plays an interesting variation for knight g7. So usually they play queen b6, correct? But your opponent is playing knight g7. So what do you think Grishchuk played here? Castle is very normal. A3 is normal. But always this d4 pawn is the one which becomes weak, right? So now after knight g7, we got an opportunity to play the move knight a3. Very interesting. The point is we're going to defend it with knight c2. Why we are not able to do it earlier is because the bishop was on f8. So if you see here, and if you play here, you always run into this idea. So this is one thing we have to keep an eye off. Or maybe better would be bishop b4 check first. After bishop d2, bishop into a3 takes and knight into d4. So this was one problem. But the earlier knight g7 helps us to avoid this so that we get this knight e3. C takes, knight f5, knight c2. Queen b6. I'm not saying knight a3 was found by Grishchuk because it has been played earlier, but he's using this line in this game. Castle, rook c8. And here in this particular position, it has been played many times. And white usually tries the move a3, h4, and even g4. Knight of e7, knight h4. So this has been played a lot of games. Knight g6. So what white wants is basically wants to play f4, f5. Knight g2. So this has been played in many games. But here Grishchuk comes up with a novelty. He plays the move king h1 first. It looks like a very bad move. But the point is, he's going to play g4 next followed by a quick session of knight h4 and f4. So knight a5 happened, g4, knight e7. Here he plays the move. Yeah, it is very ambitious, but of course he has prepared it at his own and is coming for it. Knight f e1. Why knight f e1 is because after bishop b5, he has a beautiful knight d3 to avoid the exchange and go for the direct attack. So king h1 was a very interesting novelty at that time in 2000. So when I started to study these games, I was able to understand different ideas. When I was studying the classical games, I got a basic idea of how people are playing usually. But when I chose a particular player and started to see his only games, I was able to see a different perspective because he was able to do both attacking with this like king h1 novelty, g4 attack, and he was also able to play positionally with the queen side play. So this, and even till this year, I think till last year, he has been playing French advanced in title Tuesdays, and so I'm able to even see the recent games and see what he's doing right now in this repertoire. With this, I will be able to get a very good understanding of the opening. I can even select a few more players like Seshnikov and Yu Yang has played a lot of games. I can even choose his games and study French advanced. I will get different perspective. So once I'm very well prepared with this understanding and all, then I will go into the concrete approach. And the concrete approach, I don't want to say anything because this is what many people are right now doing. Concrete approach is basically which is the move order which you're going to choose. And to study the concrete move order, basically you need two things. One is a mega database, and the next is an engine. So with mega database and the chess engine, I think anyone can prepare the concrete moves. But that is not important because everybody can nowadays do the concrete moves and memorize things. But if you are not able to do these works beforehand of how studying a particular player and learning the middle game ideas, you won't be able to play the variation at higher level. All you can do is manage and memorize and just go with the game to game if you're not going with that aspect. So with this, I would like to conclude the session.